Susan Cars, a docent here at Seafloor Beach, and we are going to take a walk today at Seafloor Beach State Park, and I'd love you to join me. There are so many interesting things here at Seafloor Beach State Park, and one of the most unique things we have here are fossils. Now, how many of you think these fossils are from dinosaurs? Thumbs up if you do. Well, they are not. These are all marine fossils because we're right near the ocean, and the dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago and longer ago than that. These fossils are young in the fossil world. They're about 2.5 to 3 million years old. And what that means is that at one point, where I'm standing right now, where people walk, where dogs walk, where there are RVs, camping, was all underwater. And that's pretty amazing to think about. But a really amazing fact is if you go walking sometime in Nicene Marks, you might see fossils there as well. And while it's pretty amazing to think about this being underwater and having marine fossils here, think about that in our local redwood forest, that means that where Nicene Marks is was also underwater millions of years ago. Now, one thing is if you come here on your own, because Seafloor Beach is a state park, unfortunately, you're not able to collect things and take them home.
Hello, I'm Bob. We're at the fossil wall here at Seacliff, and I'll be presenting some of the information to share with you today. We're the scientists that study fossils. We normally they are called paleontologists. An example of a paleontologist working on a shelf with his helpers, and they use different tools to do this. These fossils are fragile, so some of these tools are very soft, and brushes and little spike-handled instruments so they can take the siltstone, mudstone, and soil material away from the fossil itself. As you can see in this diagram, that these fossils are embedded in the material. So when you try to discover the fossil, you work it carefully with a brush and tools until the fossil becomes visible. As you see with this example, where someone's trying to take a fossil out and work with it, and you can get the size of the fossil by the size of the hand. Now in Seacliff, there are 5 very common fossils we find at the shelf, and you can see them here in the diagram. And these fossils are found here, and paleontologists, their main function is to discover the names of fossils when they go into a bed or a site that they're trying to work. And there are certain techniques they use to discover the names. Now these fossils were once alive. They were animals and plants that were alive 2.5 to 3 million years ago here at Seacliff. And when they pass away or die, their shells, which are made out of calcium, remain. And calcium, of course, is the shell's the same material as bones and teeth in humans and other animals. So the next step we're going to do is how do the scientists, paleontologists, or people that work with these fossils discover their names? And we'll do that next.
Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm also a docent, and I'm standing here at the fossil wall. As you can see, some of these are representative of the shells that we have in the fossil wall. The fossils are actually the remains, as Bob had said, of animals that were alive before. But if you notice, these all have names. So how do you think the paleontologists figured out what the names of each one of these were? And this is one of the ways that paleontologists figured out how to differentiate between different shells. First, they would look at the shape, find out if it was triangular, had a spiral shape, or oval. Next, they would look at some features, find out if there were grooves that went sideways or crosshatched like a net, or none at all. And then they would look at the structure, which is the thickness of a shell. So why do you think they didn't use size as a difference? If you think about it and you have an answer and you answered probably because one was small like a juvenile and one would be big like an adult, and that would still be the same shell, you would be correct. Now, some of these shells we have here are examples of what you find in the wall. Some of them are whole, like this one, or they come in fragments like this. So you realize that one is fragmented and one is a whole shell, but take a look at the first difference. Do you think that these two have the same shape or different shapes? And if you decided they had different shapes, you would be correct. This shell right here has an oval shape. A little hard to tell right now, but you can see that it's almost an oval shape, whereas this shell right here has a triangular shape. And if you look closely, it also has a spiral shape. So these two are different shells. So that's one way the scientists could figure out the difference between the two shells, and they could then name them later. We're going to be using a fragmented shell, which is what you'll usually find in the fossil wall or fossil shelf. But I wanted you to see what an actual surf clam looks like. So in both cases, you can see the parallel lines, and you can see the parallel lines here. And so that's how we determine partly what the fossil is, and that it's actually a surf clam. So here we have two shells, and let's look again at the shape. Are they triangular? Are they spiral? Or do they have an oval shape? And again, this is a fragment, but remember, this one was an oval shape. And if you look closely, these are both oval shapes. So that's not much of a difference. So we're going to go down to the next feature and find out what the texture is. So they have lines going sideways, the lines that cross-hatch like a net, or is it smooth? So take a look. And if we look carefully, this shell has lines that go sideways, but this shell, they cross-hatch. So these do have names. This is a surf clam. This is an example of a little neck clam shell. And on here, you can tell they are very different. Okay, we've just been discussing fossil differences. So let's go back to the beginning with our original question. What are fossils, and why are some marine fossils found on dry land? First of all, we went through and decided that paleontologists study fossils, and some of these fossils are millions of years old. Okay, the fossils themselves are made of calcium that you find in shells and bones and teeth and things like that. The fossil differences here help us to determine what the names of the fossils are. But again, why are some of these marine fossils found on dry land? Let's go to our mini ocean found in our visitor center and meet some friends who are going to be discussing that with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Carol and I'm a docent at Seacliff State Beach Visitor Center. And we're hoping that real soon you can actually come into our visitor center and visit us. But today, you are joining me in our classroom. Our topic for today are fossils. Why do you think we study fossils? Hopefully you're getting some ideas. We study fossils because fossils tell us what was going on our planet a long, 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 long time ago. And I'm talking before there were humans walking across our planet, before there were cameras, and of course cell phones to take pictures of things. But fossils tell us what was going on, particularly as it pertains to Mother Nature and the things that happen on our planet. If you were to describe to a friend what a fossil is, what words might you use? I'm guessing you've come up with words such as rock, something hard, maybe bone, maybe something was buried, and you'd all be correct. So we're going to find out how those words come into play with fossilization. At Seacliff, we're going to talk about marine fossils. What do I mean by the word marine? When we're referring to marine at Seacliff, we are talking about the ocean, things that pertain to water and the ocean. And of course, at Seacliff, we're right here on the ocean, on the Monterey Bay. So we've got marine fossils. And we're going to be looking at some of those creatures that live in our ocean. The fossils at Seacliff are really pretty young. They're only 2.5 to 3 million years old. And when you come into Seacliff, you might see some fossils that are maybe 5 million years old. But they're very young compared to dinosaurs, which are 60 to 65 million years old. That's a really, really long time. But still, our fossils are pretty old. That's lots of years. So, to look at fossilization, we are going to use our mini ocean. And there's 4 of the conditions we need for fossilization that can be found in our mini ocean. Of course, I said ocean, so we need water. We've got water in here, and I can kind of make waves, just like what's happening out in the ocean. Those waves are powerful. They are bringing sand into the beach, they're taking sand back out, moving sand around, moving rocks, all sorts of things are moving around. And with every wave, we say it's changing the shape of our coastline all the time. Particularly in winter when we get those rough seas, the coastline changes. So we've got water. Below the water, there is an ocean floor. Down deep, the floor is rock solid. But on top, there may be sand, mud, other rocks. There may be things growing. Coral. We get seaweed attached to the sand and the rocks in the ocean floor. But we have an ocean floor. At Seacliff, we have lots of sand. So we've put sand in here as our ocean floor. And of course, you're probably noticing that this sand is wet. The sand higher on the beach, of course, is dry, which makes it fun to dig in. This sand is wet. The third thing we need is something you cannot see. Believe it or not, you can't see it, but they're in here. And there happen to be an amazing number of them. There are 47 of them. And if you are splashed by the ocean, you'll taste one of them. I bet all of you are saying salt, and salt is a mineral. And there are about 47 minerals in the ocean water. Fresh water, like lakes and rivers, might have a different number of minerals. But our ocean has about 47 minerals, okay? Salt is just one of those. But we can't see them, but they're in there, and they're really important to fossilization, so we'll get into that in a moment. Now, the fourth item that's in our mini ocean is calcium. Calcium comes inside shells and bones. So you have calcium in your bones, and that helps your bones be strong. In our mini ocean, we have the shell of a moon snail. And you'll be hearing more about moon snails in a little bit. But there is a moon snail shell. It's got good, strong calcium. Okay? So let's review these four things real quick. We have water. We have sand, rock, mud for the ocean floor. We have those things you can't see, minerals. And the fourth thing is calcium. Okay? Now, we're going to put those together with two more conditions. We are going to make our own mini ocean. Okay? So I need you to pretend that we have ocean water here. That this cylinder is full of ocean water. Okay? So what do we need below the ocean water? We need the ocean floor. So we're going to put some sand in. This happens to be dry sand, but if this sand is underwater, it's going to be very wet. Very, very wet. So we've got the water, we have the ocean floor. Remember those minerals? Those minerals are in the water and they're mixed up into that sand in the ocean floor. Now, we need some calcium. I happen to have another moon snail right here. Okay, aren't they neat looking shells? So this moon snail shell, because we're not going to use live animals in our classroom. So this is just the shell. We're going to put it in our mini ocean for our calcium. So that moon snail is just going about what it does normally, looking for food, traveling the ocean floor. It's just enjoying life, but then some catastrophic event happens. This could be caused by winter storms that move that sand. It could be caused by earthquakes, which buries the moon snail. And it buries the moon snail so deep that this snail cannot get out of the sand, which means that clams and other snails and creatures are all buried under the sand. And this moon snail can't wiggle. It's being held tight by what we call pressure. So I want you to push your hands together really, really tight. Create some pressure. Like you've got a moon snail that you don't want it to ever move for 5 million years. So that's what's happening right here. It's being held tight, and all this sand and water has created weight, which is adding to the pressure surrounding that moon snail. The insides of this moon snail just biodegrade, but the shell stays there. Now, remember those minerals. Those minerals are in the water, and they're seeping down into this wet sand, and a chemical reaction happens between the minerals and the calcium of that shell. And it's a long, slow process that changes the shell into a fossilized, hard substance. It even makes the sand around that moon snail get hard. And that's fossilization. And it takes a long, 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 long time. We have right here some fossilized moon snails. These are somewhere between 3 and 5 million years old. And see, even the sand around the shell became hard and is part of the fossil. So that's what's happening in fossilization with those conditions. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Joyce Garvey, and I'm a docent here at Seacliff Beach Visitor Center. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about fossils. I'm wondering what you know about moon snails. Let's take a look first at a regular snail that you might see in your family's garden eating up all the plants. This snail is an herbivore, and this animal has a lot of body parts very similar to what we have. Has stomach, heart, liver, kidneys, and it's very interesting to see how similar we are in so many ways to things that are so small. This is a picture of a moon snail, and I want you to take a look at this animal that lives inside the shell. That's a moon snail, and it moves on what's called a foot, the same as a garden snail, moves along on a foot. And there's actually a video, if you go on YouTube, there's a video of a moon snail swimming, and I really recommend looking at it. It's really a lot of fun. So the moon snail carries its shell on its back, and its shell is actually its skeleton. Where do you carry your skeleton? That's right, on the inside of your body, and that's called an endoskeleton. So the moon snail has an exoskeleton, carrying it on its back. The moon snail, I'm wondering where it got its name. Where do you think it got its name? It's also called the Lewis moon snail. So a hint would be in the name, moon snail, which is a compound word, two words put together. So the hint in the name is it's very similar to something that's in the sky that appears to be changing shape. It actually doesn't, it's a shadow, but appears to be changing shape, and it's a whitish color. If you guessed moon, of course, you're right, it's the moon. So it's very similar to where it got, very probable where it got its name. A moon snail is a carnivore. It is a meat eater, like the garden snail is an herbivore, and we are omnivores. We eat both plant and meat. But the moon snail is a carnivore, and it has a tongue called a radula. The tongue acts like a drill, and it goes to the hinge of a clam, and it drills away at the very top, the hinge, for up to even 24 hours to be able to suck out the meat from the clam and eat it. So that is what a moon snail does and what it is. Let's talk about sand and where sand comes from. In our first presentation, Carol talked about minerals, and if you think more about sand, sand does contain minerals. I wonder where those minerals come from. Where does sand come from? Well, let's take a look at our map behind us at the Santa Cruz Mountains. And if we look at the very top of the mountain, what are things that are up there that might contribute to making sand? If you guessed rocks and boulders, you're right. And I'm wondering how the rocks and boulders that originate up here at the top of our mountain, Santa Cruz, come all the way down to Seacliff Beach or New Brighton or Twin Lakes or Natural Bridges. How do they get down there? If you guess that rocks and boulders crash against each other, coming down the mountain, getting as to smaller and smaller and smaller rocks, and then maybe stones, and then pebbles, and then eventually sand. And how do they travel crashing into each other, going all the way down the mountain? If you guessed erosion, you would be right. If you guessed they travel through streams or rivers, that's right. There could be floods. There could be all sorts of weather conditions that bring those over a long period of time, bring those rocks to boulders, to stones, to pebbles, down to sand. And one thing about our coastline, even though we have sand continually coming and sand that's going out, is that our coastline is changing. It's ever changing due to erosion and natural elements that erosion provides. Let's take a look over here at our to the maps. The first map is a map of today, what our coastline looks like today. The top map is a map of the coastline of what it looked 5 million years ago. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a time to kind of look at both maps to see what the differences are. So here on the map of today, we have where we are right now, Seacliff Beach, and you might be anywhere in Santa Cruz County, but here's Santa Cruz, Monterey, Watsonville, and then if you look way over here in the upper corner, we have cities, Fresno and Bakersfield. And if you've ever traveled here with your family, it probably took you about 2.5 to 3 hours, and it's generally hot. We get a lot of people in RVs coming to our visitor center to escape the heat in the summertime. Okay, so those are main things probably that you notice. And there's a lot of land in the first map, the map of today. A lot of land and less amount of ocean. In the upper map, the map of the coastline 5 million years ago, you probably identified that there was more ocean, less land, and an island. We don't have an island down here, but 5 million years ago, there was an island. And look where Seacliff Beach was, and Santa Cruz and Watsonville, Monterey, all in the ocean 5 million years ago. And take a look at where Fresno and Bakersfield, look at the difference between Fresno and Bakersfield today compared to 5 million years ago. Very close to the ocean. Now, you might ask yourself, well, how did the scientists know that there was an ocean 5 million years ago? How did they know that? And an island? Well, they found, they had hypotheses. Hypotheses is information that scientists have based on scientific evidence. It's the beginning of an investigation. And most likely what happened is that somebody found, probably digging up in their garden, some fossils that look like this. You can actually see lots of different types of clams. And most likely this was turned over to some scientists who took a look at this, and as you would guess, well, these things can only come from the ocean. So they started investigating more, and they did a lot more research. And what they did was they found evidence that in fact did show more evidence that there was an inland sea here. I want you to think for a little bit about what kind of animals might have lived there and what evidence scientists might have found. So if you guessed whales, you would be right. If you guessed sea lions, you would be right. And actually the sea lions, they found evidence that they were about 12 feet long, which are much bigger than the sea lions we have today. Also, they found evidence of sharks. So they found bones from animals, and they found what part of the body from the shark? Do you think they found? Teeth, because that's all that's left when a shark dies. The only thing left behind are the teeth. And the teeth and bones contain calcium. And calcium can lead to fossilization. So the scientists discovered there was a sea, and they named it the Tembler Sea. So I want you to think a little bit about that island. And the island, the thing about the island is it moves 2.5 inches a year, and it moves north. So if it moves north 2.5 inches a year, where would that island be today? You'll find out in just a few moments. Thank you very much for being part of this fossil program. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us at Seacliff State Beach Park today. And we hope that you get to come back with family or friends and enjoy taking a walk and seeing the wonderful things. And when it's safe and the visitor center is open, hopefully you can also go inside and see some of the wonderful displays and see birds and sea otter fossils and other things that we have here. And perhaps also someday when schools are open again and you can come back for a field trip, maybe your teacher will take you and you'll see some of the things in person that you heard about today.